I am very excited to be here with John Paul from Surfer Blood. John, I think this is the first ever interview I have done in a kitchen, so this is an exclusive. We've got gas burners right behind you, so we got to be a little careful here. But we're at the Cayucas Vets Hall here in San Luis Obispo County, and this is the first time you've performed here, I assume.
This is definitely the first time we performed at this venue. We've performed before at SLO Brewery before they closed down, but happy to be back.
Yeah.
This part of the world, it's really beautiful, and the drive was fantastic.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, this was kind of a historic event because, of course, here you were with Cayucas here in Cayucos. You guys have actually done 2 shows on this leg of the tour, Phoenix and LA. And I just saw today that Billboard Magazine actually posted a review of your guys' show from yesterday at the Telegram Ballroom. And it was a really good review, actually, talking about the packed house, 600 people there. Have you? Did you get a chance to check out the Billboard post today?
No, but I'm really happy to hear that. I try not to read any live reviews because I feel like I know better than most people whether or not a show was good or not. But I'm flattered to hear that. I thought it was a good show, and the crowd seemed to be really receptive. So we were definitely really happy when we got off stage. So I'm glad they concur.
Very cool, man. Well, John, I wanted to ask you about a thing that's very true to my heart, which is the word jabroni. I'm a big fan of the Iron Sheik. I've interviewed him, and he is an old school WWF wrestler from the 1980s, and he uses the term jabroni a lot. And of course, your very first version of your band called Jabroni Sandwich. Kind of wanted to ask you about the inspiration behind that name and what kind of inspired you to switch up the name a little bit, ultimately to become Surfer Blood?
Well, we went through a bunch of names early on. My sister actually came up with the idea for Jabroni Sandwich. She also did the artwork for Astro Coast and Terra Classics and 1,000 Palms, so she's like a really talented, artsy girl.
Wow.
And I'm not sure what, apparently jabroni means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but to me it just kind of means like sort of like a know-nothing, like, musclehead, but, like, in the most endearing way, like, one who's, like, kind of, like, world-weary and, like, pouty and, like, just, like, very sweet, I guess.
Okay.
Kind
of like a character you might see in Of Mice and Men or something like that. Endearing, kind of innocent, but...
Yeah, and like, the kind of person you'd find in, like, certain parts of Florida.
Okay.
And, yeah, I'm glad we changed our name to Surfer Blood. It was a pretty good decision. Yeah. Honestly, we didn't really take the band very seriously until we met our guitarist Thomas, who is no longer with us, but he was the one who kind of encouraged us to play shows outside of Florida and to book our own tours and to buy a crappy van and all things we ended up doing.
Yeah, and Thomas, a huge influence on the band. Of course, you guys very much publicizing the GoFundMe campaign in honor of Thomas's cancer treatment. I think going back in April of 2015, I think maybe is when you guys started it. But even here at the merch booth, you guys had some really cool placards educating folks about the challenges that Thomas has faced.
It's been a year since we found out about his health, and he unfortunately had cancer when he was 17 years old. Wow. So this is the second time in a decade he's gone through this, and it's been a year, and while he has things kind of under control, it's still going to be a long fight, so he needs all the love and support he can get. Please visit the GoFundMe page. Please buy his tape. It's called Burner. It's out on our record label, Joyful Noise. And it's been a tough year for him.
Yeah. And you really can't talk about the history of Surfer Blood without referencing Thomas's influence, of course. So really integral part of the origin of the band. So.
Yeah, he like I said, I had never really considered taking a band seriously. I just kind of always recording music because that's just kind of an extension of my personality in some ways. And we played a few shows, but once I met Thomas, we sort of we got in the van and we went up the East Coast and played shows in bars to, 8 people. And it was only a matter of time before, people started noticing who we are, which we were, like, super, like, surprised. When I was recording Astro Coast, I had no idea how people would react when they heard it. And things just sort of took off for us, and we went on what feels like a never-ending like world tour.
I want to ask you about that, John, because your guys' sort of ascension into the public sphere, very much a success story. I mean, looking back, early praise by Pitchfork, CMJ, and then of course All Tomorrow's Parties, right? Curated in one instance by the guys from Pavement, which must have been a pretty cool, surreal thing, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Pavement was my favorite band in high school, for sure. I look up to Stephen Malkmus as a lyricist and a guitarist more than almost anyone else. Yeah. When I found out we were invited to play a festival that they were curating over in England, that was actually our first festival we'd ever played. Considering that we were, like I said, playing in bars in Raleigh to 10 people a few months before, that was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was a really, really fun year. Wow. For us, yeah.
All Tomorrow's Parties. I mean, a lot of bands, My Bloody Valentine. I mean, a lot of bands that maybe had their heyday who have been known to. We think of Coachella as like the place that bands come and sort of reunite, have their big on-stage thing. This year, Lush is a big one. Last year, Ride. I'm a big fan of early '90s shoegazing music, and but bands like My Bloody Valentine sort of came back during All Tomorrow's Parties, and then kind of gained momentum. So it's kind of a critical darling event for the ultimate fans, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. I forget who it was who curated, but someone got Weird Al Yankovic to play his first show outside of the U.S. So
that's very awesome, actually. And we had the pleasure of interviewing Weird Al about 6 months ago for a documentary we're doing about KCPR, which is the local college radio station. Weird Al actually went to college at Cal Poly, about 10 miles south of here. And that was actually where he got his start. And we actually got to talk to him about his origins. He was an engineering major, and he ended up dropping out and getting into music. So really, really cool guy. That must have been a really special event to see him perform that.
Well, I didn't get to watch it. I just saw that, and I literally felt so happy for him. That's funny. My dad's actually an engineer, too. Sons of engineers end up...
There's just that sort of the math rock, the calculations of the tunes and everything. I don't know. Well,
seeing music is the world's most difficult math problem.
There you go. Well, John, I am a huge Pixies fan. You mentioned the Pavement, huge Pavement fan as well. Saw them back in the day. But the band for me when I was coming up that really was a big influence was the Pixies. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of the members of the band through the years. And you guys, of course, just musically a lot of commonalities, if I may say so. Just surf rock, really wonderful melody, sort of pop structure. And you guys have a really interesting connection with the Pixies. My understanding is that back in 2011, you had kind of a chance encounter with some of the members and ultimately went on to tour with them during the Lost Cities tour that they had. Tell us a little bit about the Pixies connection.
Well, they were doing a Lost Cities tour, and I'm not sure what it was exactly. I think by that time it was no secret that we were huge fans. Yeah. And we actually met them while they were in a layover in the Auckland airport. We were doing our first Australian shows ever, and we were, and that was just icing on the cake that we had like a 4-hour layover with them. And
so there you are in another country, international, and in the hangar bay in the airport are the folks from the Pixies. That must have been quite an interesting phenomenon.
It was interesting, and we were definitely starstruck. I won't lie. We were, we went into the corner and kind of whispered to each other, more or less, and we went up and introduced ourselves to Frank Black, pretty sheepishly, and they were really receptive, and they talked to us, and Kim Deal was talking to me about like which neck pillow to buy. So it was just like this strange thing to see like these people that you grew up idolizing as human beings trying to kill time at an airport.
I tell you, wow.
And I'm not sure if that's the reason why we ended up touring with them, but maybe it helped a little bit. Anyway, we did like 2.5 weeks with them, and I never left early a single night. I stayed and watched their entire set the entire time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and a lot of, again, the connection between Surfer Blood and the Pixies, kind of Pixies being old school, a couple decades back, and Surfer Blood, a lot of commonalities. So I'd imagine opening up for that band, there was an opportunity to really connect with an audience that might be really receptive to some of your particular music.
Well, their fans were quite receptive, and even their crew, the people who do sound and set up their equipment for them, were super nice to us. I can think of very few tours I've done where I was treated, so well. We would be late, and we would we would text someone in the crew and they would say, take your time, don't worry, like get here safe. And the kind of stuff that like, in our experience is sometimes overlooked on tours of that size. So, and they were all really, really interesting people. And it's strange because their personalities are so drastically different from each other. And yet, just like when they're together, it's just this incredibly unique thing that could not have occurred in any other alternate reality. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, and I always really loved about the Pixies the gender. Having a female in the band in a non-token way. I think in the Pixies, just that feminine masculine connection. And I wanted to ask you guys, most recent addition to your band, who tonight first time touring with you guys, Lindsay. And she did an amazing job. And I just wanted to ask you about that sort of feminine influence in the band. I mean, is that something that you think is kind of a positive element? Tell us more about how Lindsay's doing as a new member of Surfer Blood.
Well, for someone who is literally thrown into this a few months ago, she's doing awesome. She's a really fast learner, so, she's picking up on everything much faster than I even thought she would. Because honestly, our old bassist Kevin played with us for 5 years. Yeah. And he moved to Austin, where he has a dog and his long-term girlfriend, and
he had some career opportunities or something, I guess, right? From what I read in an article, but
more or less. I saw him the other night. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now, but he just sort of, he'd been on tour with us like 6 months out of the year for 5 years, and I think he just kind of needed a break from that. And when he called me and told me that, I was bummed, seriously bummed for 2 days, and just trying to think of what we were going to do, It was kind of a blow after, Tom in January finding about his health and just,
Yeah. I mean, there are some bands out there, John, that could have really dysregulated the core of the band. I mean, to the point of maybe breaking up. But in the case of you guys, you reconvened, you just proceeded, kept going. So that's a pretty, like a phoenix from the flames. You guys kept going, which is pretty beautiful.
Oh no, I was happy actually. It's a funny story. I called Tom and I said, "Hey, like, what should I do right now?" He's like, and I've known Lindsay since high school. Okay. I think I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. Yeah. She went to high school with me. She was a freshman when I was a senior, and she was really good friends with my sister, who went to the same high school as me. Okay. And it was a very arty high school, thankfully. I had a really good public education, but I was just sitting by my car, being a senior with a car, just being really cool. And she came up to me, and I was in a band at the time called the Nina Pinta, which I still think is a really tight name. Check it out. It's
very much so. I like it.
It's on MySpace. And she just walked right up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Lindsay. Like, we haven't met, but I'm having a party this weekend, and I'd really love it if your band came and played at my house." And that was the first time she cold called me. Okay. And I said, "Yeah. Hell yeah, we'll play your party." And, Tom had told me, "You should ask Lindsay. I think she would love to do it." Yeah. And the next day I was going to call her, and I live in Los Angeles now, so it was like 10 o'clock my time, 1 o'clock her time. Wow. And she called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I was talking to Tom. Like, I hear you guys need someone to fill in." And it was really that simple. Wow. Okay. And I said, "I will send you like all the stems tomorrow." like start learning because we got a big tour in November and I don't know what we're gonna do. Yeah.
Well, from the looks of things tonight, Lindsay did fabulous. So Lindsay, if you're watching this, keep up the good work. The crowd really was digging her too, and you made reference up there a couple times, or she did, that this is the first time I've played this song live or whatever, and didn't miss a beat. So pretty impressive, man.
Yeah, no, she's doing great. Like I said, she was thrown into this, and she's just adjusting so well. And I'm very happy with the whole band dynamic right now.
Very cool, very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of getting back to another question I just asked a few minutes ago, kind of the Pixies connection. You, of course, had the opportunity to work with producer Gil Norton, right, who worked with the Pixies and various other bands through the years. I wanted to ask you about what that was like with Gil. I mean, what the creative process was, how much freedom he allowed you in the band to have, or whether he had any sort of influence on the sound of Pythons. What was that like?
Well, Gil Norton is someone who expressed interest in us pretty early on. The first ever tour we did in England was February 2010, like pretty much the month after Astro Coast came out, and we were like, in another country for the first time all together, and that was really crazy. He apparently came to one of our shows. Wow. during a thing called Camden Crawl, which is a lot like South by Southwest, but in London. A lot of people came up to me and they said things like, I think you guys would do really well with Gil Norton. And sure enough, he was someone who expressed a lot of interest in working on Pythons when he heard the demos and stuff. And when we talked to him on the phone, he was the first one who kind of had ideas for songs. Okay. He obviously was speaking from notes he had taken while listening to them, and I think we appreciated that. And Gil, working with Gil, he's great with songs. He's a very opinionated and stubborn man.
Like a lot of producers out there. I mean, people talk about Steve Albini, long list of folks, and there are some producers that are known for being perfectionists, which is another way of saying stubborn. So depending on one's perspective, yeah.
Right. I mean, well, to me, we butted heads a few times, but for the most part, like, we understood each other and, understood each other's differences and stuff. And I'd say, that was our first time being in a really nice studio, and he had an amazing engineer, amazing equipment, a beautiful sounding room. While we never asked for that, we never said, we're the band who needs all of this. It was really fun, and I learned a lot about, recording and, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it was kind of that classic case of a young and hungry band who, given major label support, kind of then went into the big studio and had the opportunity to work with kind of unfettered with a lot of production ability. But that for a lot of bands, that's kind of a stretch. That kind of puts them out of their comfort zone. It's maybe too sterile or too the risk of being too overproduced. Is that something that you guys felt like just too much sort of I don't want to say professionalism, but too many options maybe in terms of coloring your sound or?
Well, we are naturally, quite goofy people, if you haven't noticed from the live show. Mm-hmm. So, to us, like, trying to make a grown-up record, I think is sort of defeatist, because to us, the keyboard part that you record at 2 o'clock in the morning in your basement when it's just you and your band members joking around is the thing that you wake up the next morning and say, this is what makes the song. This is what we're keeping. Yeah. And when you're in a studio with a lot of people who have lots of experience and you really respect and want to, kind of want to impress, I feel like you end up sort of watering things down unnecessarily. And
that makes sense. And after you've done like 30 takes of something and it's kind of lost its organic appeal, I could see how it feels a little formulaic or it loses some of its organicness.
Well, I think Pythons is a great record. I wish there were more variety on it. I wish it was a lot longer. It's not a perfect record by any means. But I never feel like I have to lie awake at night and ask myself, what if we went to a studio and cleaned up and like polished everything? I know it happened, and that's not our band, and that's totally okay. Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, at this early stage in your guys' career, your trajectory, to have learned that lesson and to know sort of what fits for you and what doesn't is a real gem. For some bands, it takes them, by the time they learn that lesson, it's sort of too late. And so I wanted to talk to you guys, kind of a final question for you. Here we are on this tour, really successful, critically acclaimed, and here we are in 2016. I just kind of wanted to ask what the future holds for Surfer Blood. Any record store day releases, any singles that you anticipate coming out this year, any more studio work?
Well, we're on a label, Joyful Noise, who I mentioned earlier, who are very boutiquey and just a very creative and resourceful bunch of people. So we'll probably end up doing something for Record Store Day, but right now our main focus is I was at home all of December, and I had a bunch of songs written. I recorded like 15 or 16 demos.
Wow, okay.
And I've now taken the plunge and played them for the rest of the band, so they're, the ball is starting to snowball a little bit. Now it's just a matter of, sort of getting things right and rehearsing a lot and getting into a studio hopefully sometime early this year and working on stuff. No, I mean, who knows when it'll come out? Like,
yeah, you don't have a big record. Like, I got to put out an album this year to fulfill a record label pressure, but it's just the creative process for you guys to see what feels right.
And honestly, like, I'll be completely honest about this. After our first record came out, and everyone was like, "Write a second record." By the way, you're like on a huge label. That was a lot of pressure for me. I bet. And when you're 22, you think you can handle anything, and that was just a huge weight on my shoulders that I was not really ready for. Writing and recording music is something that becomes more natural to me sort of as time goes on, and I feel like I'm probably in the best headspace I've been in a long time.
It sounds like it, man. I mean, having I know it's a cliche, but talking about the sophomore slump, getting through that, and the major record label acclaim and critical acclaim, and that can really tear a lot of particularly younger artists. So it sounds like you have made it through that, my friend. So I'm very excited to hear about that.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
There we go. Well, I guess all we can say is really cool things to check out here with Surfer Blood here in 2016. We're really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, John Paul, for your time, brother.
For the interview.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for filming.